Hello and welcome back to Wisdom in Action, the podcast where we explore what it takes to bridge the gap between knowing and doing, because that's where the real wisdom is born. I'm Austra, resilience coach and podcast strategist, and I created this space to have honest conversations with real experts to bring you practical insights you can apply, not just think about. Today, we are joined by Melissa Schwartzman, a therapist and divorce consultant who has spent over 25 years helping people navigate the emotional and practical challenges of breakups, co-parenting, and rebuilding life after separation. She's here to talk about healing, identity, boundaries, and what it really takes to start over with clarity, confidence, and renewed purpose. Melissa, welcome to Wisdom in Action.
I'm so pleased to be here.
I really look forward to this. So to start us off, what is one piece of wisdom that changed everything once you started applying it?
I think you have to dig deep and really know that you have to trust yourself. Sometimes you don't think you've got it, but you got it.
How do you get to that realization?
It's like you have to think right now. Sometimes when things are really, really tough and you can't see anything ahead of you have to know and trust yourself and think about what's one thing that you got to do first, and then the other things are going to follow. So, for example, if you feel like someone broke your heart or broke your trust or really did you dirty, right? You got to think about what's the first thing I need to do for myself. You got to forget about them, forget about what happened. What are you going to do to put your first step forward and take it? And what do you need to do to rebuild? And know that you can trust yourself to do it. You don't need anybody else.
Okay, there's a lot to unpack just in that alone. Um, Trusting yourself. I feel like it's one of those things that it's easier said than done. We all have heard it. We all know that, oh, yeah, I know, I should trust myself. Completely makes sense as well. But in your experience, what have you seen are the main things or reasons or main barriers towards trusting ourselves?
I think we rely on others to kind of formulate our own thoughts and beliefs, right? So, what are others thinking? What are others doing? We might think we know what we want to do for ourselves, but we're like, what is everybody else doing? So, I think we don't trust. There is that thing like people say, trust your gut. And people are like, what does
Mhm.
that mean? But I think we often know like what feels right and what doesn't feel right. We know when we go and meet with somebody, we kind of know if we jive with them or we don't jive with them, or we know if we've made a choice that doesn't feel good and we've gone along with something that doesn't. So I think we start to know, and sometimes when we're in this situation, right, if we're starting to heal from a bad relationship or a bad situation we know we've made a bad choice. So when you're asking, how do we know to trust ourselves? This time we're going to listen to that gut feeling, that voice that is saying this isn't right. And it's so hard because you're asking, like, hey, describe that. That's what's so hard. It's not something that's so easy to describe. It's just because you're starting to know yourself. And it gets easier as you start to rely on that.
That is so true. And it's this interesting thing that I have noticed, especially with younger generation, myself including, is that we grew up with social media. So I think a lot of times we look for answers outside of us because we think that's where they are, and we are exposed to all the social media, everybody else's perfect lives, and all that. But it's kind of like we never actually think, or it definitely isn't the first thought to go within and try to look for answers there, because all the answers actually are already there, but we are so distracted from ourselves. We don't really spend any time not by ourselves, with ourselves. Big difference. And we don't really know ourselves. And even like with what you touched on, the relationships or the breakups or the bad choices, then we go into the relationship again, relying on other people's, like what you said about other people's opinions and things like that, or what you think you should do. And then down the line you can get to the point where you're like, who am I?
Isn't that like quintessential question, right? But you're right. All these intangible things that we don't know. But social media is such an important thing because we're looking at everybody else. And like you said, everybody else got it better. but we don't realize nobody's posting anything that's not good. And then we're trying to like mirror everybody else's life. And so we've almost like creating a life that is everybody else's. We become like a mirror of everybody else. So back to what you're saying, and all these younger generations, right, that are growing up looking at everybody else, where when social media wasn't such a big thing. And as you've given my years of experience, so I can kind of, there's no big secret how I was growing up. We didn't have all that. So we were kind of making choices by not looking at what as much. Like there was always that comparison factor. That's human nature. But I think it's really important to think about, yeah, we can see what everybody else is doing. What are the hot trends? What's cool to do? But we also have to think about, what do we maybe want to do that works for us, that's similar to what others are doing, but maybe what's slightly different. Because it's not always good to do just what everybody else is doing if it doesn't feel good, because we get ourselves down a path too far, it's hard to circle back.
So, 2 points to that, or like first question would be how to avoid going on that path. How to actually, I feel like we are wrapped in this, all the should and all the expectations, everything. How to unwrap yourself from it and actually have distance from it, even where you can distinguish which one is which one do I want versus which one people around me are either projecting on me or expecting, and then I try to fit in the all the also cultural stuff and everything like that. How to distinguish them? Do you have any advice there?
Absolutely, right? So there's these cultural norms, right? Whatever age you are, right? You're supposed to go to college, right? But some people now are saying, maybe I want to take a year off and do something that I really want to enjoy, or something that I want to be sure I want to major in. So it's important to say, wow, well, if I wanted to go like study in another country before I actually go and do like a 4-year college, you need to say to yourself, I really needed to go and have that experience before I needed to go and be like in that structured college environment. Or I wanted to know that I really wanted to do marine biology, so I wanted to go study marine life. You need to say, it's okay for me not to go and do that. Maybe the thing is, people say, oh, you're supposed to get married. But maybe I'm not a person who wants to be in that type of life where I'm going to have the one person for the rest of my life. I'm not a monogamous person. I'm going to raise my hand and say, I'm not going to be with one person and be in a monogamous relationship. That's really going against the norm, right? But maybe it's better to say that than get in relationships with people where you're then not going to be true to a person, and then you're going to be that cheater, right? So better to say that. Then what? Another choice that people say are the norm, right? You're supposed to get married and have children. Well, what if you want to have a lifestyle where you want to have a partner, but that's where you want to leave it? You don't want to have children. So before I get too farther down all these paths, and also same sex partners, right, are also choices to make that not always people are accepting of. We know that. But you need to say, I'd rather please myself than please what is these accepted things, these norms, what society is telling us, what's all over social media. Because we're not going to feel good within ourselves, which means we're not going to feel good about doing the choices we make, which further means the reverberation is we're not going to be healthy in and around the people we're having relationships with.
It's such a tough one to navigate. Feeling good with yourself, yet not being accepted by others, or be accepted by others and not feel good with yourself. How to let's say the person chooses their path, what aligns with them, what feels right for them. How to navigate that sometimes even negativity that might come from people around you, especially the closest people. And with that, even the sense of loneliness that might come with that.
Absolutely. Well, it's also a fear of kind of rejection. right? And then you feel like people have said, well, if you're not going to make a choice that I think is right, well, then I don't know that I can be around you anymore. And so it's a big feel of loss, a big feel of rejection. And so basically, by choosing you, you're now being a loss of others. So it's really hard to do that. And it takes a lot of time and a lot of healing. And where we started today, right, was how do you dig deep and how do you find it within yourself to move forward with that? And I think that's one of the hardest things to do. But where I'm going to go forward with that to answer where we started with that and answer your question about how do you deal with the loneliness is that you can't really deal with loneliness and you can't really deal with finding people that you connect with until you really love yourself and accept yourself. Because until you do that, no one's really going to love you and no one's going to really accept you. And then you can't deal with the situations where people don't accept you. So that's really the heart of it all.
I literally wanted to go there, relationship with self, and you just you went straight in there. It's such I have definitely seen that in my life, even like with relationships and people I would have around me, where initially I usually say I'm a recovering people pleaser.
Oh, yeah.
So so a lot of it would be, oh, what's the best for the other person? Whether it's friendship, whether it's like dating or anything, like it would be, oh, what's the best for that person? I don't really matter kind of thing. And then the more work I did on myself, the more, and also big thing that I have learned, because I had few years ago somebody tell me, oh, you should make a program on how to adapt to situations or how to be able to, like for me, I moved to new country 2 years ago. This is my second country outside of my home country that I'm living at. And I would have people messaging me 1 month later, how are you doing? And have you adjusted? And I'm like, I was fine the first day. Like, I was good. Like, I had no issues with that. And I was thinking, why is that? And I realized that a lot of times when it comes to trusting ourselves, it's also trusting our ability to navigate whatever will be the outcome of decision we make. Not just the good one, but also the negative one. Because a lot of times when we make decisions, it can go either way. And it's like, do I trust myself to handle both the positive and the negative, or something that I can't predict, especially with new experiences, because that's where a lot of growth really happens, is in the new. And I have realized that my ability to, I understood, I got to the point where I was like, I got it, I got myself. I trust myself to find a way to figure it out. But it came through a lot of situations where I was like, I don't think I got this. I don't think I don't think I can figure this out. And then I did. And it was exactly the same, or like different situation, but the same thought process of like, okay, I think this is the end. This is, I don't think I can handle this. And then I handle that. And the more you go through that, the more you build your trust of, here's a list of things that I went through that I overcame. And I trust myself to take on this next thing. But it's one thing that I see is we have this expectation that, oh, I will go through all this, or I won't go through all this, and I expect myself to trust myself, have confidence in myself to handle the next challenge. But a lot of times it comes from going through those experiences. And also, we actually have a lot of them. We just dismiss them or we don't pay attention to them. We all have a lot of them.
Yes. Mm, absolutely. Well, the real growth is in terms of making mistakes, right? We don't like when we do them, but they're really important. And we can't always get it right.
True.
So I think what you're saying is we learn as we go. And we like to say that we're going to make the right decision, but we can't. So I think what you're saying is you came to here, you were in different countries, you have transitions and you have to go forward and live. And sometimes you get it right, sometimes you get it wrong. But hopefully you don't make such a big mistake, right, that it's not course corrected. But we learn and we adapt and we grow and we adjust. And I think that's one of the big things about what life is like. You can't always get it right, but how you react when you don't get it right is the biggest thing. So the best thing is when you screw it up and then people don't notice. So what you don't want to do is like make a big thing and then sometimes people don't. But when your recovery is the biggest thing. But when you could just when you get into a situation where you're able to say, "Oh, wow, I really wish I had done this, but now I bet you'll never do that again," if you're in the same situation. So, in work examples, right? If you had forgotten, like, to copy a very important person on an email, I bet you'll never forget that again. One thing I learned about that at work is I always put a Post-it up, like, "Who needs to know?" So that I
It's a good one.
have that up there so I never forgot that, right? And then, if you were like doing stuff with friends, right? And you were planning stuff with people, and then you would like remember, like, oh, did you make sure that you included like the core people that needed to go? But then if you were planning something else, like a bigger event, then maybe you could invite extra people. And then if you're starting somewhere new, like you, right? You're gonna maybe know that maybe you don't know the right place to go to dinner or even like the tipping. Like maybe you didn't know it's included in that already, right? And you're like, oh, now I just gave 2 double tips, but bet you won't do that again. So I think we have to accept that we're human and that we're gonna screw up. Anybody who walks around thinking that they're gonna be perfect and flawless, then they set themselves up for a very tough road because then they're constantly on themselves. They're constantly feeling like they're not measuring up. It gets to the same thing again. We're talking about the society norms, the social media. Everybody else is getting it right. Everybody else is getting all these things. Look at their, Instagram. Oh my God, they made the For You page and I didn't, right? Like, you got to give yourself some grace for some mishaps. And you want to have them so you can develop.
Yeah, I think the big challenge is not to have the black and white thinking about it, where it's like, oh, I failed, so it means this. It's no, it's just a stepping stone. I had this way of describing it that when we play the game, we usually by the end of it gets or like the first level or whatever, we get to this big monster. And it doesn't mean that we will win with the first time, but a lot of times if we don't win with the first time, it's like, oh, I'm starting now square one. Not really. You actually know what's ahead. You know what you have some experience you can learn from. You get some lessons. And then as you go into the next attempt, you have these lessons you can take with you. And it's the same with anything really that we fail at. Not that I believe in failure, but um but in general, like it's something that I noticed for me. I don't really have the concept of failure as much anymore. But before, it was so paralyzing that if there was any chance that I could fail, I'm not doing it. That's how certain I had to be.
Well, I think you raised a good point, right? People don't even get started with things because they're so afraid that they won't succeed. And that is not a good thing. I think you should do the best that you can. I always like to tell people like to do like an 80-20 rule. Like if you can do 80% of it, like go for it. And even less, right? Don't set yourself up for perfection. You're going to fail.
Yep.
You're going to
Yep.
feel like you're going to fail. Like you want to remember those like SMART goals, right? Be specific, measurable, attainable, realistic. Do things that are realistic for you. You can always add. So start small and
Yep.
add. And I agree. Don't say like using the word failure, right? That's like challenges, right? Things that are challenging. Didn't do
Yep.
it all.
Yeah, and even with when you fail or things don't go your way, it doesn't always mean that it's the bad thing. It actually might be like direction or like it's guiding you into something else. This is a funny thing that I realized. It's like we have this thought of I know exactly what my path has to be like. I know exactly by what date what has to happen, and then it's like how sure can you be of that, and how sure you can be that that's actually the best thing for you? Maybe there's something better waiting for you that you have no idea what that is.
I think that's true. I'm a big believer in like the universe kind of steers you one way or the other, and you don't always know. And that happens in personal things, professional things. You sometimes just never know. I mean, I had a prior career in human resources, and I unfortunately always often had to let people go from their job. And I always told them, I know right now you feel like this is awful. You're losing your job. But I promised them that this sometimes is like the best thing that's going to happen to you. Often, in my other flip side, I work with, as you know, a lot of people who are going through changing in their relationships, often sometimes in a divorce, and they feel like this is awful. But I say it's not bad that if your relationship didn't work out. There's other things that are going to happen to you. Sometimes, like you go to a new country. How do you know that you're not going to meet somebody that's going to be amazing? Sometimes people they graduate from college and they say, I'm going to be an investment banker, right? I'm going to work these hard hours, do all this thing. And then you know what? They decide that they want to move to St. John and open like a boat making pizza, right? Like things happen, you meet people, you do things, and you change it up. That's part of an exciting thing of what life can not be like mundane and boring.
It's I think it's something that it's such a it's so such a great reminder because it's I have seen this a lot. Like last year, I did my first half Ironman. I have never done triathlons, nothing. I haven't done broad bike. I haven't really done open water swims like properly, not like training. And I gave myself 90 days to prepare for it. And usually it takes 6 to 8 months. And I ended up finishing it, and it took me 7 hours 44 minutes, I think. And but I remember I would have people asking me, "Oh, so are you triathlete now? Is that the thing you gonna do?" And I'm like, "Well, for me, there was a time that many years ago when I was really young, I started to wake up at 5 a.m. when I was playing basketball because I was so insecure about the way I was running. And I was like, I'm not good enough at basketball. I have to work extra. So I'd wake at 5 a.m. because, not because 5 a.m. club, because nobody was out there. I would go for my runs. And that led me to be able to play all game with no breaks. I didn't get tired. But I have always had this belief that, well, I can't run long distances. I just can't do it. And when I was in UK, there was one course that I attended, personal trainer course. And there was one person who I made him the Ironman program. And I remember thinking, oh, I would love to do that, but I can't run. The literally was, I didn't even consider it. And then I think it was like 5 or 7 years later, I watched the movie Brittany Runs Marathon. And I was like, well, if she can do it, I probably can as well. So I literally found the program online. Like right after I watched the movie, I found like couch to marathon program. And a few months later, I finished my first half marathon. And I remember before I did it, I said to my friend, once I finish this half marathon, now half Ironman becomes a possibility. Because up to that point, that was the only piece that I was like, well, I can't do it. And now I have 4 half marathons and 1 half Ironman.
Wow.
And it feels sometimes it feels surreal because it's still like, did it happen? Then I have the medal and I'm like, it did happen. But for me, it was more so about my internal journey, about proving myself wrong, about something that I thought, oh, I'm so right about it. I'm not good in long distances. This is not for me. But it was more so about, okay, this is my impossible. Let's see if I can prove myself wrong and I can actually make it happen. And then let's see what where I go from there. Like you never know what door is gonna be open, but I think it's we get so stuck into this. I have to be certain that this will work out and this will turn into this before I take even the first step.
Yes. What you're saying, though, makes me think about something also. How much we can be responsible for how things turn out by how much is our mindset and how powerful that can be for ourselves because we can sabotage ourselves right out of the bat. Because if we tell ourselves, oh, we can't do it, we're not going to do well, all of that, that is exactly what our outcome could be. But if we get ourselves in a mindset where we can do it, where you kind of said, okay, I don't like how I'm running, but I'm going to get up every morning and I'm going to do it. And then you say, okay, now I'm going to nail this triathlon. And you tell yourself that you're going to nail the triathlon. So things you never thought you could do, if you set your mind to it, you ultimately can do it. On the flip side, if you keep telling yourself, I cannot do this, I won't do this, it won't be good, it will be terrible, guess what happens? Ultimately, that happens. So you are in control of things and your own outcomes. It's so powerful if you take a step back and think about that.
Yeah. And another thing that I can mention there is that you actually don't have to believe it to do it. Like at this beginning of those 90 days, I was certain I can't, like with where I am right now, I just can't physically do it. I barely finished half marathon, and that's what you finish with. And but I remember thinking that I have this concept of commit before you're ready. Once I commit, once I signed up, go figure it out. And then on the race day, I wasn't anxious, I wasn't scared, which was really interesting experience for me. For me, I was more like, well, today I find out if in 90 days I can get to the point where I can finish it or not. That's what I find out. It's not about whether I'm good enough, whether I got it or not. With this time frame that I had, with the training that I did with this time frame, I will find out whether I can do it or not. That's all I'm gonna find out. It doesn't mean anything about me. Um, and and I was already winning because in those 3 months I got in such a good shape because I was training so much. And I think it's something that we have this assumption that when it comes to confidence, and I have been ruminating a lot on it, that we need to feel confident before we do it, but actually gain the confidence as you do it, because that's where through experience, through the feedback, you start to see, oh, I got it. Oh, I show up for myself. Oh, I'm getting better.
Yeah.
You don't experience it when you sit in sofa and you think about, okay, I think I want to do this race, but
Right.
I don't think I got
Right.
it.
Exactly. Also true.
What
The
would
mind,
be, yeah, go ahead.
no, I said the mind is just so powerful.
Yeah. Speaking of confidence, do you have any advice with building it, getting more confident?
Absolutely. And that's something that really is, as we talked about at the beginning, kind of finding your internal self. That's a lot about confidence. And when people have a blow in their life or something happens that sets them back, confidence can kind of ebb and flow. So I think it's really important to think about how you get your confidence. And sometimes you have to take small steps to gain it back. So if you have a big blow in your life, you need to take that first step of something that you think you can do. So if you've had a setback, sometimes it means that if you're spending a lot of time in your house and isolating, you need to make sure that you get out there, whether it's going to a coffee shop and not leaving with your coffee, but actually sitting there in
Yep.
that space. That's the confidence you need to be out there in the open, interacting. And sometimes when people haven't dated in a long time, that confidence to put their profile out there. And sometimes if somebody maybe has lost a job or has wanted to take a new job, get that confidence to put themselves out there. So I think people sometimes when they are doing something for a long time also, but they are have set a goal for themselves to do something different. They sometimes don't have the confidence to stop the status quo. So I think people really need to think about, well, I can do something better. I can reach that next goal that I set for myself. And I think again, we go back to that powerful mind thinking. Think a lot of times we get stuck on one thing we don't like about ourselves.
So
Like, let's
true.
just say we have a body image thing, right? Where we're like, oh, I set this goal that I was going to lose this weight, but then I didn't do it. So now I'm like, I'm not going to feel good about putting myself out there for anything. Or, this person's so much smarter than me because did a better grade on a test, or someone else got promoted and I didn't. So then we come up with all these reasons not to feel good about ourselves or not to put ourselves out there. So I think it's important not to have one thing that we don't like, then we generalize it to everything. Now I'm no good. I'm not good at anything. So I think it's important I like with people I work with, I always say, let's start with the success for the week. Let's start with something that we did that was good. And I like them to keep a running list of what that is. So then we're in this space where Because we all have this, right? We go through a period of like, oh, nothing's going right. I don't feel good about things. Let's have this list handy. We could take it out and remember our successes. So I think really your question about confidence is it definitely dips. Oh, and let me tell you, the people that we look at, wow, that person's always so confident. They think they're the best. They're usually the people who have the lowest confidence because they have to put on that air. And the people who like to pick on other people and point out bad things, they're also the people with the lowest confidence because they have to make you feel bad about themselves,
And they
yourself.
also are super self-critical if they criticize you as
Yeah.
well.
Yep.
Yeah.
Got it.
It's usually when I get some criticism, it really depends. Constructive criticism, well, it's all welcome. I look for it. I always look for getting better, things like that. But if it's not really like, it's more like not hate, but opinion about me that is not good. For me, it's I look at it as, wow, it must be so hard because they must be so much more self-critical towards themselves.
Yes.
Like it must be hard because I know I have been in that place myself where it's like you like nothing. Like I have good example actually
Yeah.
on confidence. I few years ago with the other podcast that I have, um I remember one of the I was at the shared house, and one of the housemates, she was like, have you ever thought about like doing a podcast? You have the voice for it. My first thought was, oh, I can't do it. I have an accent. That literally was my first thought. I can't do it. Like I have an accent. I don't have like English is not my first language, so I can't do it kind of thing. Ended up doing it anyway.
For you.
One of the best things that I did. It's been so much fun. And also I have learned how to speak more clearly because sometimes when I get really passionate, I'm just like blah, blah, blah. I just get into the rhythm or have some of the Latvian words come out or especially if it's later in the day. Usually I know that when it starts to mix between Latvian and English, I know I have to stop the work because my brain is shutting down. If I say something and the person is not responding, I'm like, I rewind the tape and I'm like, oh, I said it in Latvian. Okay, noted.
Oh,
but
but
it's something that confidence is I have experienced it in my life is such a game changer. And I think it also helps with even like touching on relationships. Um, when it comes to finding the partner, if you don't know who you are, if you don't trust yourself, if you don't know your own worth, you can end up seeking that worth from somebody else who might not actually be good for you. The person might not be aligned. You might not have the aligned values and what you want in life, but just because it makes you feel better about you can end up you can end up making that decision to be in a relationship, maybe even like get married, and then down the line you look back and it's what happened.
you're so right. I mean, I think often people think that when they find their person, that it's the person supposed to like complete them and be their everything. I think that's often dangerous because what you want to you have somebody who's going to support you, compliment you, but you can't rely on them to be your everything. And that's really hard when people believe in that. What you want is to somebody that you know and you feel good about yourself and you bring that to the table. And then you want people that can be a compliment to that. But when people are looking for somebody to be their everything, that's when it gets really dangerous.
How to Is there some ways how people listening can identify if that's what they're doing?
Yeah, because I think when somebody is with somebody and they feel that they are giving up a lot of things that are important to them, not only emotionally, like things that they feel like they would not necessarily agree with, but they're going along with, whether it's even somewhere that they like to live in the city, but their person they're with likes the country and they've now moved out to the country. Or they're somebody who likes to get up in the morning and work out, but they want to be spending time with the person. So they're staying at their place and now they're not by their gym, so they're not working out in the morning. Like if you're giving more than you're getting, those are like tactical things, but I'm talking about emotionally too. Like if you're always listening to the other person, but then when you want to have them listen to you, you're not being heard. Like if you feel like you're gelling too much to the other person's and not getting enough of what you need, that's when you feel like that's definitely happening.
How to I'm now imagining the fast forward scenario where y- let's say the person we have like this one person in mind that has made so much compromises over the years to the point where they have pretty much like they're not doing what they enjoy, they don't do what they like, they're now on the brink of breakup,
Yeah.
and they have no confidence, no clarity who I am, what I'm about. They look back with all these regrets of what have I done. Confidence super low. How to navigate that experience, because especially as you are in the moment, because you can jump to so many negative conclusions about yourself or blame yourself or sabotage yourself. How to navigate that?
Right. Well, I think what happens is people reach a threshold, right? And they're like, have kind of like put themselves last for so long and suppressed so much, they reach a threshold. So I think they can either kind of come to their partner and kind of say, like, things have got to change. This is what we've done for so long. And they have to kind of be willing to articulate that and kind of see if their partner's willing to change this dynamic up. Or then they may have to make a realization that they have to put themselves first and this relationship's not going to work for them, which is a hard choice, but a healthy realization for them. And then they need to, again, we talked about, sometimes make not all the right choices, but then their mistakes help us to learn about things that we're not going to do again. So we take that learning to the next time maybe we're going to make a choice about being in a relationship, and we're going to know that we're going to be very clear about our must-haves in the next relationships and our must-have nots, and we're going to make sure that we don't repeat them. However, being a relationship expert, I do know that that isn't always what happens, and we sometimes have these repeatable themes, but it is really important to try to watch out for making sure that the things that you do need, that you're advocating for yourself.
What would be your advice to for somebody who is, let's say, they're now freshly out of relationship, they're in, or they haven't started looking for next one yet. Hopefully, I think. Um, what would be your suggestion of what should people do before they start even dating? Um, in that period after they get out of the relationship they had.
Yeah. Well, I think it's really important I feel like it's a loss. When you get out of a relationship, it's a loss. So I think you have to mourn it. There's a grief process. So I think you need to do that. I think you need to reconnect with yourself. So I think you should spend some time alone. I think you should spend time doing things that you enjoy. But I also think you should reconnect with friends and family and do things with them. But I think you should do some of what I said. I think you should assess the relationship and what went wrong, your role in it, because if you're in a relationship, it is not one sided.
Two-way street.
There were things that you were accountable for, there were things the other person was accountable for. And I think you should make that must have not list so that you know when you're ready. And yes, I do not agree with getting right out there again and jumping into a new relationship. And yes, we know about going out and sleeping with somebody right away makes it feel better. And I'm not saying there isn't some element of like that physical connection feeling good, but might feel good in the moment, but doesn't always feel good the next morning. But I think it's about kind of having a recalibrate for yourself emotionally.
Yeah, because I can imagine it can be such a hard it might even feel like contradicting advice. It's like, I don't want to be alone. I was with this person. Now I'm by myself and you're telling me to be by myself. how
Yeah.
how to navigate it, because it's especially if it's been like long-term relationship and you're used to having somebody there, how to even go through that initial phase where it can feel so lonely and so empty at the same time, even if that breakup might have been good for you, but it's you still feel that emptiness.
It is a really hard thing. It's one of the hardest things people go through, breakups and relationship changes. So it just is a reality. So you have to kind of push through. And that's what even when we started today, we were saying, how do you get in touch with yourself? Feel this inner gut, get this confidence back, know yourself. is because you pushed through this really hard thing of being by yourself. It's one of the hardest things, especially for people who don't enjoy it. There are some people who enjoy their own company, and then there's people who cannot tolerate it. So I think it's part of it. Now, when I said, spend time by yourself, getting to know yourself, make these lists, I don't mean to isolate yourself, right? But
Mm.
suggesting is that you go fulfill this emptiness and isolation and loneliness with going out and finding another romantic partner. But you certainly should go see friends, family, go do activities you should enjoy. But you also need to make sure you take time to, grieve the loss, process it. And yeah, you're going to have to tolerate, like if you were spending every weekend with this person, and then if you live in the neighborhood, you're going to run by the favorite restaurant that you ate at, the coffee place that you liked. And oh my God, the song comes on the radio that you liked, or the concert that you went. Now they're touring again, like the memories, right? Or, oh my gosh, you have the pictures on your phone or on your Facebook or Insta, like,
Instant triggers.
yeah, you're going to have to learn how to fight through that.
I
It's
actually
tough.
have done something similar with friendships as well. Like
Oh,
because
sure.
on the growth journey, it's like you outgrow the people. And I actually realized what was it that I was mourning. It was it was not the relationship right now. It was the potential of it. That's really what I was struggling to get over. It wasn't the where it is right now because I knew that I have outgrown that person or the friendship is just naturally falling apart. Um and there's no hate or anything. It's just like it's just, life happens. But I think the hardest thing for me was it's the potential of it. That you see that you have seen this whole time. And I always see potential in everybody, but also like with relationships that I have with people. And one thing that actually has helped me to even like with friendships to a few years ago, I think it was like at the New Year's, I just sat down in a cafe and out of nowhere I just started to do friendship audit. I would just I would just write down the list of people that I considered important in my life, and I would just kind of reflect on the relationship I had with them. And I got to conclusion that majority of them, if not all of them, there's only like one or two that it wasn't the case for. I was the initiator. I was the one that would initiate the meetup, and then when we would meet up, it would be more what's more convenient to them, not what's convenient for me or what's like kind of the middle way. It was more like for them, which also my role there as well as people pleaser. Like it's not just them, like it's also me. Um, and I started to see how way off the give take ratio was. Because for me it was like, oh, they gave me something. They're such an amazing person, and I would just like give, 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 give. They give me something like tiny bit, and I'm like, oh my gosh, they're so amazing. And then I sat down, I looked at it from like upper view, and I was like, okay, this is not what I think it is. And it was really eye opening, and it was really interesting because that list shrunk from people that I would consider like where I see that it actually is a two-way street. It isn't just, oh, I give, give, give. I'm the one that is always giving. I am, all that. It was really eye opening. But unless I would sit down and actually consciously, intentionally give any attention to that, I probably wouldn't see that. I would just be in the usual pattern. I'm the one that is initiating, and yeah, sure, whatever works for you, like my time, my doesn't matter, whatever works for you. Um, and it was that dynamic as well where I was playing a role in it, which also was really interesting for me. I was like, oh, okay, so I also need to set some boundaries. I also need to make them aware of maybe we can meet midway, or maybe we can do this or that, where I initiate it instead of expecting them to do that. So it was a lot learning about them, but also about me. And it was it's really eye opening, and it is hard also to when you outgrow the people, and it's the same with the romantic relationships as well, because we actually I'm really curious on one question.
Yeah, sure.
What to do when, let's say, two people are in a relationship. It's not like, oh, now that we're in a relationship, we're gonna grow at the same time. We're gonna go through the challenges at the same time. There's different times of up and downs for each of the person. how to navigate it when one person is up or they're like, they have the promotion, they have everything going right, their fitness, health, everything is perfect, while the other person might be going through their healing journey, or their life is just not going for them at this period of time. How to navigate it while being in the relationship.
Yeah. Well, that's what I think successful relationships are like because not everybody's going to be on an equal place. So I think it's learning about how you can celebrate somebody as they're doing something, but also be there if somebody's not doing as well. And that's what I think a true friendship, a true equal relation partnership is like when you can help somebody, when you can celebrate someone's success and also not be in a good place, and you can also be in a successful place and not and also help somebody that's not doing as well, and know how to do that for each other, and also know how to receive that from somebody when you're not in a good place when they are, and also to be able to give to somebody when you're not in a good place to somebody who is in a good place, and it is not easy.
Yeah.
And, you could see that be a real source of tension, both in, romantic and non-romantic relationships, because we all are human and we are envious of people. And when we're not in a good place, we're not our best selves. So it's very hard, but it's a strong relationship is able to tolerate those highs and lows together.
Which I
And
think is another reason why self-awareness and building a relationship with yourself is really important.
yes, but I also admire your ability to kind of do that friendship assessment that you were talking about because you really don't want to be around people that are toxic. It's the same thing, the must have not list. It's the same thing for relationships. And if people are not giving you what you need to advocate for yourself in the same way. And I love it with the boundaries. If you don't have them, people are just going to continually do what they want, continually advocate for what they want. So I think that that was a great exercise and a great way to advocate for you.
There's this thing that I heard about it. Um, People treat you the way you teach them to treat you.
Mhm.
So if I would be always, I was that like friend who is always there, always available, all that. Um, which I'm still available when it matters, when it's really important. Like for me, it's not a question. I'm always there. Like it's a non-negotiable. But it would be like for small things. And I felt like this is my obligation. I'm the good friend. I have to do that. That's what I learned about friendship. I always have to be available, kind of thing. And I heard this. I don't remember where, but I just remember that it was a big realization. People treat you the way you teach them to treat you, and it's the hardest thing to actually change that dynamic. When you start afresh, it's slightly easier. It's harder for you because you're starting a new pattern that you're like, ah. But then when it's already ingrained in relationship, how you start set boundaries then? How do you actually start to change that dynamic, especially when it feels so scary, and you don't know what will come from it? What would be the first step to start to do that? Especially the other person also, they have their own expectations about you that they have learned over the years that this is the way you are.
Yeah, so it's definitely hard to change an existing dynamic that's gone on for a long time. But what happens with people is that one person makes a change, it upsets the system, so the other person's going to react and make a change to that. So pretty simply, right? I guess it's really coming forward and saying, I'm not really liking how this is going on, so I'm going to have to ask that like we change this up. And then it really depends on what kind of reaction the person gives you and if they're willing to make that change. I'm always a big fan of meeting in the middle because really one person is not always going to get 100% if they want, and then the person's not going to change 100% to meet that. So I want to be heard. I'd really like to make this change. How can we do it and meet in the middle successfully, especially if one thing's been happening for a long time? So I think people need to express what they want to change, talk about it, and then see how both people can still kind of meet in the middle without everybody changing completely. Because again, let's think about things that are going to be realistic to achieve so we can be successful.
Yeah, that's very true. I feel like you could talk for at least a few more hours. Um, Before I ask you the last question, where can people connect with you, learn about you?
Yes, absolutely. I'm at Melissa Beth Counseling at gmail.com. Melissa Beth Counseling and Mediation on Instagram, and Melissa Beth Counseling on Facebook.
All right. We have all that in show notes as well. So last question for you. What is one piece of wisdom you're still learning to live?
I would just say you have to constantly learning and growing about myself and learning all about different ways people are interacting and engaging.
Love it. Well, Melissa, thank you for coming on. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. And to the listeners, if you're an expert with 20 plus years experience and you want to come on, there'll be details below. I would love to hear and share with the audience your wisdom. And if you're somebody who wants to start a podcast, need help managing podcasts, or wants to get on more podcasts yourself, there'll be details below as well. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next episode.